Good evening. Hello, everyone. Carl Steinbeck here. Want to cover the closing arguments by counsel for first by the defense, by attorney Kevin Reddington, and then we heard it from the prosecution. Unlike most everywhere else in America, including federal courts, exclusively, everyone has the prosecution go first, then the defense, and the prosecution gets rebuttal. But they do things a little bit differently up there in Massachusetts, as we've seen. And so that's one of the procedural differences we see up there in the older common law type of era is maybe what they follow that from. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And I'm going to interrupt it as I think appropriate to make comments. So if you guys are looking for a straight through shot with no commentary, this is not the channel to do that. But I'm just going to give you my honest assessment of this. I do think the prosecution is not very likable to this jury. I think the prosecution has acted as more like overly aggressive, and in some respects, I think a lot of the people think that they're bullies, and I can just see the jury having that impression. Reddington, on the other hand, he's come across like a statesman. He's come across like a true lion-hearted kind of guy that's really fighting for his client, and people want to see attorneys that fight for their clients. They don't want to see the attorneys being so overbearing as these two we see sitting here have been. So you got to be tough, but you got to be fair as a prosecutor. It's got to be about justice. And I think they're missing the mark here. And let's see how they do in their closing.
And so after we go through the closing arguments, I'll come back and give you the balance of my instructions on the law. All right. And so, counsel?
About 5 weeks ago that we met like this, and I indicated to you that thank you for incredible service. That, all of us mean that sincerely. You took literally.
I can't even hear this guy. I'm sorry. I'm using a different provider. Let's see. Let me go. I normally use Law and Crime, so sorry to interrupt. Law and crime trials. Let's see. I see everything about before and after closings, and I'm not seeing anything. So that's why I went with this different source. Day 22, looking all through YouTube here and just seeing ABC and CBS. I use CBS. That's a better sound. So bear with me, please. Okay, here we go. This would be a lot better.
Burden of proof. To prove, number one,
start beginning.
That we met like this, and I indicated to you that thank you for incredible service. That, all of us mean that sincerely. You took literally more than a month out of your lives and sat here attentively, incredible, through some of the toughest, most gut-wrenching things that any person can be subjected to. And I think I indicated that, sadly, jurors carry this trauma with them for years.
I think he's talking so low, softly here that he's just not being picked up on the mic. He's not standing in front of the mic. So you gotta make sure that the jurors can hear you. So hopefully they can hear him in the back row.
And the service that you have performed, I have never seen before.
Or he's personally vouching that you're not supposed to do that as an attorney, but prosecution does not object. So
You have listened to evidence. You have been fair. You have been objective. You've listened to the judge's instructions.
he's got those kind of glasses from like the 1930s or 20s. So he sort of has that dignified elder statesman look, doesn't he?
And you've carried them into your heart, consistent with your oath, which is a very, very solemn oath. Passed between government and Lindsay, who has placed herself on her country, which country you are, as a jury of her peers. When you consider what's at stake here in the sense of what we've been dealing with, Cora, Dawson, Calvin. She knows loss. And that's why we think Cora does. Calvin. For a minute. They are the victims of this case. They are the victims of the horrible, horrific act that has been laid at your feet as jurors to decide whether or not Lindsay is guilty. Beyond a reasonable doubt, as His Honor instructed you and will instruct you, what that means, that standard of proof that we as citizens in this country are so blessed to have, proof beyond a reasonable doubt before the government charges any citizen with a crime. I don't care how many cops you have in here, how many DAs are sitting here, how many people are sitting in the front row, and they're all going to sit there and be proud of this prosecution. I told you in the opening statement that this is a prosecution that has ripped the soul out of this girl. This is what they had. This is their family. How does
You know, when he says this prosecution ripped the soul out of Lindsay, I'm sort of wondering, it's like, well, I felt like she didn't really have much of a soul left after this happened, that the most horrible thing that could ever be cooked up and imagined to devastate your life, it's already happened. So, um, so I don't know, is he making it sound like she was pretty fine, doing pretty good until the prosecution decided to charge her? That doesn't quite connect with me. That's the best comment to make.
turn into this? How? Because of the damn medicine and the lousy medical care that she got. You can troop as many paid experts as you want.
That's a really a strong point right here, because all those darn meds and the shoddy care she got, desperately seeking help, and she just didn't get it. She never got competent help.
Come in here and tell the jury, oh, well, she didn't say that she heard voices inside her head. She said she heard voices from outside her head. She said she was making chicken McNuggets. There was a bowl on the sofa. She wasn't making chicken McNuggets. She said something. As I think and I muse and I try real hard to tell you what my opinion is, that this woman was acting in her right mind when these children were killed. So, when you consider the evidence in this case, you consider the person who is in front of you, who is the defendant.
So he made it sound, is he making it sound like some of those points are hurting his points he's trying to make on the case? So I don't think those are really strong points he's bringing out about where the chicken McNuggets being fed before she had Patrick leave. You know, some of these discrepancies between what she's saying, also about when the voices were, how they were heard, any kind of details like that. The people can pick up on wrong things like that. But as far as McNuggets goes, I mean, I don't know why he's bringing that up just here a couple minutes into the argument. I didn't think that was a real strong point.
As the government refers to her, and as His Honor will than likely tell you, even though a person is a defendant in our system of justice, they don't have to defend against anything. The government has the burden of proof. When the DA decides to charge someone with a crime, he has the burden of proof. His assistants have the burden of proof to prove, number one, that Lindsay is guilty of this offense beyond a reasonable doubt. And then
I think when defense attorneys talk about the district attorney, not the assistants, but the district attorney, it makes it sound like a higher level of government is prosecuting Lindsay. I'll just focus on these two prosecutors in court. Forget anybody else. Just make it look like this is some kind of personal vendetta by these two. That's what I think a more effective thing to do if you're trying to get the jury to dislike the prosecution.
And prove, number two, that Lindsay, at the time, killed her children, was not suffering from a mental disease or defect that caused her to have a lack of substantial capacity to appreciate, to know, to realize that what was being done while she was in a psychosis. But we'll laugh about that. It's just another woman. I guess it's just going to make an excuse. She's depressed. GAD, general anxiety. Give her a couple of pills. She'll be all right. You know from
He's being sarcastic here, but this is such a critical point about the burden of proof and that they have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that she was acting sanely, which is a really high burden. So I would think he wouldn't be in that kind of sarcastic mode right now.
looking at the objective evidence in this case. This young lady, believe me, I don't have many clients like that. This young lady did nothing wrong in her life. She was a nurse, a daughter, a wife, and a darn good mother. You can see from the objective evidence, you can see, and you'll have all the exhibits for you to look at, and you can see by looking at these photographs, which you will have in the jury room. You can see the Facebook postings. You can see what she indicates about, for example, I just randomly grabbed this one. A son, my prince, that they would have you think she killed him first, cruelly, because she didn't like him. That is repulsive. So she's living real life with Pat, her kids, having a great time that summer. Life is good. She had to go back to work. In an opening statement, I told you, I said, watch the evidence. Watch the manipulation. Because that's what this case was built upon originally and how it developed as the case progressed until it's in front of you. And how does that happen? Well, in the very beginning, going all the way back to when the first 911 call that you had to suffer through was made, you could hear in the voice Pat Clancy, the horror, what he had obviously experienced. You can see from the evidence that's before you the injuries that she suffered. You will have in the jury room the exhibits that indicated the extent of the injuries from, I don't have to go through all of them, the extent of the injuries to slitting her throat, to slashing her wrists, throwing herself out a window, blood all over the bedroom floor, window open, screen slashed. Oh no, the screen wasn't slashed, my bad. That's what she thought. It's called a delusion. She was in a psychosis when she thought that. Probably right here, sitting here, believes that she slashed the screen. She didn't. It's objective evidence. And why did we spend almost a week showing you the extent and the severity of that suicide attempt?
Mm-hmm.
The reason that we had to do that is because they were arguing that it was a fake suicide.
Yeah.
Dinky little cuts, no bleeding.
This is a good point right here. This is something that they were being gaslit by the prosecution. You cannot do that as a prosecutor, be hiding the ball from the jury, switch it up and come up with a different theory. And it's very disjointed, the prosecution. I sort of wish she would have taken it from the standpoint of what was going through the life, the mind, the days of Lindsay building up to this worst day of her life. So he's sort of like bouncing around to different points, but he is likable, and the jury, I think he's got their attention, totally has their attention. He's really connected with them in these 5 weeks or whatever it is. So I think that he's allowed more grace here. But let's see how this goes here.
To kill herself? She's going to throw herself out the window, I guess, and slide down the house. Remember that one hanging off of the window? Sliding down the house, and Lindsay screwed up. And she hurt herself bad. You know that's not what happened. You know that she made, the testimony of Dr. Velkovich, that she made a very, very significant suicide effort. Right. Slashing her wrist, slitting her throat. And isn't it interesting when you consider objective evidence?
The prosecution basically made a mockery of her desperation for getting some degree of sanity and peace and harmony in her life. So they didn't come across as sincere and about truth and justice.
Googling slitting a throat. Googling suicide. Googling drugs. Googling side effects. Googling ketamine treatments. Googling all of these drugs. Googling the effects of Tufts medications. Lorazepam, sertraline, hydroxyzine, lorazepam, buspirone, trazodone, fluoxetine, zolpidem, myrtazine, clonazepam, quetiapine, diazepam, quetiapine. It goes on and on and on and on and on. You have the chat, you have the descriptions to see. And obviously, she wasn't consuming all of these at the same time, because one thing this kid did was try to do what she was supposed to do. She took the drugs as she was told to take them. She was religious in her obligations to take care of her health. She went to Dr. Tufts when she was a young lady living in a house with a husband and her babies, respected nurse, wife, friend, mother, should have Kept drinking, huh? That was a big deal, wasn't it? Remember that? We're just going to assassinate this young lady in every which way we can. Remember that evidence? I was concerned. She was drinking 5 drinks a day. She was worried about, you heard the evidence up to 2019. What are they talking about? She wasn't drinking while she had her kids. She wasn't drinking while she's breastfeeding. She would have a couple of beers with her friends. That's bad. Put that over in the bad pile. Right here. We spent all that time showing through Dr. Laposada's testimony that this was a legitimate, dreadful, horrific suicide attempt. You think about this beautiful young girl throwing herself out a window. That's a quarter. I don't know if you have to play pool. I challenge you to tell this jury why we spent a week showing that she committed, as your witnesses
Counsel, address the jury, please.
said, their witnesses, serious.
All right, he made a challenge, putting a quarter, I guess, at prosecution table.
Suicide attempt. Remember that? Tried to kill herself. So now they'll back off on that and they'll agree.
Yeah, so they made all this song and dance about this wasn't a genuine suicide effort. It was fake. Well, if she faked it, then guess what happens? She's automatically going to prison, right? So there's no way she was going to get out of it. And that's part of the thing of you're insane if you think you can murder 3 little children and get away with it and not be arrested and go to jail or prison, right? So if she's of sound mind.
A serious suicide attempt. That's why I say, watch the evidence. Watch the manipulation. Remember,
They are guilty of manipulating. They definitely are, these prosecutors. So that's one thing that hurts you as a prosecutor if you're going to start manipulating and twisting stuff around. It's one thing if you try to twist around facts, but your whole theory suddenly changes, and then you call at the very end of the case doctors that say this was a serious attempt on her life. So you can't have it both ways. Stick with what you believe is the truth, but the truth here was malleable to these prosecutors.
the argument with the bands. She took the bands out of the bag, put the gloves on, talks to Dr. Laposada on the Zoom, slams the bands down out of the paper bag, does the movement of the bands and yells at Laposada and says, wrapped. They were just wrapped. They weren't knotted because you gotta get Lindsay tightening the band, right? You gotta hold it. You gotta hold it for a minute. You gotta hold it for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. That's why she needed the bands not knotted. And then she said, it's like this. And they sprang open. Remember that? Dr. Laposada said, yeah, I saw what you did. And she walked away like if the glove won't fit moment. Quarter number 2. What did Patrick Clancy tell
I've never seen this before. You're dropping quarters. I guess, is that on the overhead projector? He's not projecting them, but he's dropping on the overhead projector there.
testify to? You heard his testimony. He indicated clearly, unequivocally, they were knotted around the necks.
Right. This guy here or gal, whatever you are, you're hiding behind some caricature. This woman slaughtered 3 kids methodically, one by one, after sending her husband on a bogus errand run. Shame on each and every one of you for defending her heinous actions. Okay, well, sir or ma'am, whatever you are, all I can say is we're talking about this from a legal standpoint, and insanity is some of the evidence brought forward here, diminished capacity, responsibility. And so you don't have to attack people and resort to this being a clear-cut issue. It's not a clear-cut issue. So if people disagree with you, we don't support murder. We don't condone what she did. We're looking at it from a legal standpoint, and you don't know what's in her mind. Nobody knows what was in her going through her mind exactly, right? So don't be so harsh on people that disagree with you.
Those children, to the point where he had to struggle. And it's your memory, not mine. If I say something you don't recall, forget it. It's what you remember the evidence to be. But clearly, I would suggest he struggled to get it off of Dawson's over his head. And a police officer saw through the window. This is horrific stuff. But it's objective. And it shows the manipulation. This government, this prosecution is a mess. They would take their evidence and argue to you that she did not tie a knot and walk away, because as Dr. Laposada said, you're talking about 4 or 5 seconds, so somebody passes out. No, they got to have the 4 minutes, and that's not what the evidence shows, is it? So, as we move on, Lindsay's in the hospital. And this whole thing about conversations, and she's talking to people, and the kids are in the basement. Her throat was crushed. You heard the 911 team. You draw the inference, whether or not there's a conversation about where the children are. I tried to kill myself, the kids are in the basement, all that. You determine whether or not that was something that could be discerned. And the police investigation, because as His Honor indicates, there are two things here. Number one, proof beyond a reasonable doubt that she's guilty. And number two, proof beyond a reasonable doubt that she was not suffering from a disease or defect, as His Honor instructed you at the time of these killings. Those are the two things they have to prove. And when the police charge somebody with a criminal offense, they have an obligation to investigate. So at the end of the day, when you're talking about, well, we've got the charges are before the court, you can sit there in the court, you can feel proud of yourself. Do a good investigation. You even know what this, you'll see the photograph of the cup and the powder. What is it? They don't even analyze it. Did they take pictures? Did they analyze? Did they test the blood? Did they? Lousy investigation of this. Well, that's okay, because she was guilty. And they put her in the hospital, and she's the evil woman who killed the 3 innocent kids. And they're going to stand there while she's chained to the bed, paralyzed. You heard testimony from Dr. Zeisel. They weren't little fluffy cuffs that were securing her to the bed. They were handcuffs, not the medical treatment. Medical treatment would be, like restraints, so you don't do whatever, pull lines out and things. We're talking about when the big men were in there with their guns and their badges, and they're sitting outside the door, and they're going to make sure that Lindsay Clancy, paralyzed, chained to the bed, doesn't get up and run away from the hospital, I guess. And they just have to suffer their way through. I guess I worked 8 hours. I had another shift I had to work that night. This is the treatment. And what's important about that is what kind of treatment did this young lady get from the healthcare providers? Remember Meg Collins? She came in this court. Meg, you might remember. Tall woman, short blonde hair, squared away. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. She was not only a nurse taking care of her in the hospital, she advocated for her. She stood up for her patient. She protected her. During the pandemic, you know that Meg Collins was in that emergency room when half of us were hiding at home behind our computers, hoping that we're not going to die in a week, drinking our Chardonnay at 11 o'clock in the morning. Meg Collins was in a hospital treating people and advocating for them. That's an example of what nursing is all about. Not having attitude, not treating somebody like they're to be disdained. And what's even worse, she comes out of a coma. She is intubated. She has had major surgery of her broken, crushed spine, vertebrae, rib, thyroid. Massive, not my words, medical records, massive testimony, blood transfusion for the blood loss. And when someone, you've heard evidence, comes out of surgery, they are delusional. You've had anesthesia. You've had think about having a tooth pulled. Think about the trauma that somebody has when they're in a hospital bed laying there, paralyzed, unable to feel the lower half of their body, but able to feel with the meds and the pain medication and everything else, the damage to the spine. And then the hospital has a meeting. Remember the other doctor, I think it was Dr. Shah, the Indian woman? Wicked.
He's sort of bouncing around, not staying on a steady pace. So this is not as effective.
Impressive. She was amazing. She had the facts. She was able to tell you exactly what she observed. She was able to tell you what they were doing to treat Lindsay. She treated her like a human being.
One of the things I noticed, he's standing really far away from the jury, and I don't think that's a good move unless you're like grabbing these exhibits on the floor like he was earlier. I guess he's trying to be closer to Lindsay right here, but I think you need to stand closer to the jury to connect, like maybe 8 to 10 feet from the front row pony wall.
A damn good doctor. Came in here and told you all of her observations about her and told you one of the things that ultimately that they were concerned about is they had to have this big confabulation about, we're going to take her off the, the healthcare process. They had to have lawyers. They had to have people there. They had to have her signing documents. They had to determine whether or not she was going to be signing something to have her parents take over because Pat was not going to be responsible for her care. Lawyers, cops, handcuffs. Do I need a lawyer? Write that down. Where are you? You're out there somewhere. Write that down. Boy, she wanted a lawyer. That's a bad thing. Must be guilty. Let's put that in the guilty pile. That's why she said that in a delirious state, dealing with all of these people about that issue. But what's even more nefarious, as you think about it, as I said, your eye on the ball because of the manipulation. Paul Zeisel, big deal. I'm friends with the guy. You heard evidence that I called him. I was with Pat a night or two after this incident in the bedroom with all the blood. I was with Pat taking evidence that the police didn't even see in their thorough investigation. And I was able, as you know now, certainly, to grab this. Why wouldn't the police have grabbed this? They're all empty. You can see when they were prescribed. You can see what they are. You can see what she took. You read the testimony. It's tough to take a handful of pills. Remember the guy saying that yesterday? Tough to take a handful of pills. Well, no, they were crushed. Oh, shit, they were crushed. Okay. Where's the residue? Where's the crusher? Where's anything? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Great investigation, guys. So you have a situation where they leave this behind. They don't even look at it. One of them, and again, your memory not mine. One of them testifies, well, they might have looked at it and saw it and just didn't seize it. Seriously? They go down to the kitchen, they seized every pill bottle that was in the cabinet, along with the books. And speaking of books, one of the things that they found, smoking gun. Good moms have scary thoughts. Hallelujah. Put that in the guilty pile. We're going to put this in a plastic bag. We're going to show it to a jury so they know that this young lady had scary thoughts. Turns out that Jolata gave it to her. So you have this evidence. You have evidence of sleep aids. You have evidence in the bag. Because obviously this stuff was just thrown in there. It wasn't in a bag when I saw it inside this thing here, and we seized it. And we held it for 3.5 years. Anybody care about it? No. You had evidence that police knew that I had it. They could have it, they could look at it, they could analyze it, do whatever they wanted. They didn't have to. This here, you heard evidence. This is a little wish jar that they bought on their honeymoon in Hawaii many years prior to even having kids. And when you look inside it, you see that there's all sorts of little folded up pieces of paper. Some of them are dated, some of them aren't. They go all the way back to 2017, 2018, 20. And they reference her wishes to have healthy kids, her wishes for her kids to be successful, her wishes to have a good birth. Second time around, hoping for a good birth, worrying about the child with the, I forget, where they rub the thing like. This woman lived for her kids until she had the pleasure running into Dr. Tufts of her 2 months experience. And after she ran into Dr. Tufts, it was not a wonderful life anymore. And what did Dr. Tufts do? And everybody laughs at me. I said the television. Okay, I know it's a telemedical thing on your telephone or on a Zoom. Take more pills. You have the medical records. You heard the testimony. You know her concerns. You know her fears. Does this seem like a young lady that didn't care and wanted to score more drugs off somebody? That's another repulsive allegation. I think the evidence is pretty clear. There's no basis for that at all. She was scared. September into October of 22, young, vibrant, hardworking, you've heard all this, not my words, witnesses' words, holding goals for herself. Hardworking nurse, hardworking mother, would take the kids to the Kingsbury Club. That's another thing. Sounds pretty snooty, doesn't it? Oh, they're at the Kingsbury Club. It's a swimming pool and a place where you can exercise. Watch the manipulation. Because now you've got a situation where you've got manipulation with the Kingsbury Club, you've got manipulation with these other items here, and you've also got manipulation of Paul Zeisel told Lindsay what to say. Say that you're hearing voices. Think about how ugly that is. Because you know beyond a reasonable doubt, even though we don't have any proof, we have no burden. You heard from Sheila. Remember Sheila, the woman that's the reverend or whatever, she's the chaplain at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. She didn't know.
Okay, if you're going to troll me here, this Katerina, this channel's biased. Okay, I'm calling it like I've known it to be for many years of trying cases. I've been prosecution and defense. I know a lot about psychology and also know a lot about medication and what it does to kill people. So if you're going to call me biased, then don't watch this channel. Okay, so don't watch the channel. In fact, I'll just block you. There you go. You're zapped because you're the one that are biased because you can't understand and comprehend opposing viewpoints. So,
Lindsay, from anybody that night when she came in all broken up. And she told you that she continued. She was there when Lindsay came out of, was extubated. She was there when Lindsay was going through her treatments. She was there for 8 days before Paul Zeisel even knew Lindsay existed. But they would be in here telling you that Lindsay saw the psychologist because the lawyer went and got the psychologist to go and speak to her. And then you have these guys here, the cops. They're having meetings, talking about it. They're talking about it. Must have been the shrink. Must have been the psychologist. Must have been Zeisel. He's the guy that told her what to say, and he did not. How can you ruin a man's reputation with the career that he has had and still has, thankfully, to put him in a position where he tells a broken young woman who is vilified by our society for killing her 3 children, that he goes in the hospital and tells her to say she heard voices? Disgusting. So now you know that she told Sheila first that she heard voices.
Yeah, I think YouTube, bad actors, more women are coming out to tell about their own postpartum psychosis now. I hope the medical profession listens. I may have somebody on this weekend talking about what they had to overcome as well in terms of postpartum psychosis, where they're wanting to kill their entire family, and thank God they didn't. But it's something that happens way more often than you think, and those that are going through it don't want to tell people. They don't want to tell people because they're afraid of what would happen if they told the truth of what's really going on in their head. And here we had Lindsay not telling everybody the full details what she's going through, but she was running and running and running to go from place to place to place to try to find out who can help me. And all they could do was go, oh, here's some, try these pills. Oh, here, try those pills. Oh, here, do this. You know, nobody said something like, hey, why don't we sit down and talk to you? Like, what's causing you stress in your life right now? I think the biggest stress in her life was the fear of going back to work. She didn't want to leave her kiddos behind. So why didn't anybody ever talk about that and sit down and talk about it? No, it's 17 minutes a session over a Zoom or whatever it is. And then, oh, here, I'm going to prescribe you these other medications, right? Knowing that some of them are black label, knowing that some of these can just off you, just these singly can off you if you have a bad reaction to them. Some people react great to these meds, others don't. They can have a horrific ending and quick ending to their life and others. So these drugs can make you homicidal for some, not everybody, but for some. So that's what gets lost on people that have never come close to being around people that have experienced these kind of bad side effects.
Command hallucination. She didn't say command hallucination. I heard voices. It was a male voice. Told me. You had these other guys that came in. The government's rebuttal witnesses. Very, very impressive. Very, very impressive. The first 2, Mac, put him aside. You've got the other doctor as well. So Mac is why he was freaked out when I asked him where he stayed. And the other guy looked at me like his eyes were bugging. Why did I ask where he stayed? Whatever. Point is, they don't see her for years.
Yeah, that guy from Philly, the bald guy from Philly, he was a piece of work.
Years. And why? The other guy, Halburn, I think it was Halburn, he had to wait until maybe it was the last man, I forget. They had to process his payment from the DA's office through the school. Who cares? If you have an obligation to try and be objective, to try and even look as though you're competent and objective, why would you wait for so long? Why would you go with another guy? Why would you take this young lady and have her in a room and question her, one right after the other? Wouldn't you like to sit there and be questioned by Dr. Mack? Boy, that'd be an experience for 3 hours, 4 hours. And the other guy is going to pepper his questions at her as well between that period. And the next day, she can take tests and then go back at it again with Mack and with Halburn. And she was cooperative. She was pleasant. She was friendly. She answered the questions, and she owned what she did. She never ran from anything. She's gone through evaluation after evaluation after evaluation, recorded. You'll have the video to look at as they're questioning her, as she's sitting there in her wheelchair, hour after hour after hour, 3 years after this incident, but that's okay. You're busy. Paul Zeisel was there, literally, in Brigham and Women's, because I called him. Because I was asked to represent this young lady. You heard evidence. I saw her in the hospital. I saw her laying in the bed broken. I saw her laying in the bed practically dead.
Counsel's not supposed to advocate or testify what they saw firsthand, but he's doing it. If he can get away with it, I guess he's doing it.
I reached out to Dr. Zeisel. I asked him, please, can you talk to this woman? Concerned, as he testified, for her mental well-being. What kind of demons, what kind of horror was in her mind as she lay there paralyzed and hurting and medicated, swollen, tubes, pops, chains. He went and talked to her. Big deal. I asked him to go. You judge the credibility of a person. Did Paul Zeisel have the ring of truth when he told you that he's there out of a humane feeling to try to help this young lady? And he's been by her side for 3.5 years. Same thing as Sheila. Why would Sheila, for all this time, visit with Lindsay as she testified at the Tewksbury Hospital? She's not getting paid. She's not a hired gun. She's not somebody that's coming in to say something at my request. She loves Lindsay. He's a good kid. He's a beautiful soul.
He's going through and summarizing some of the key testimonies. So I think that's important to do. I think the best is to do a timeline through the eyes of your client and then highlight all the points that drive home your theory and theme of the case, and then point out the flaws of the prosecutions that are trying to counter your theory or theme of the case.
So you have Zeisel that has been with her all that time. You've got Sheila who's been with her all that time. You've got evidence that her mom and dad who lived in Connecticut come up and they stay and they visit with her and that they sit with her. And God forbid they actually sometimes had dinner. Remember that? They got the Tewksbury records. Boy, there's a good score. Let's go through the Tewksbury records and see what she's doing on the anniversary of the deaths. How about on their birthdays? Can you see them sitting there going through the medical records? Okay, doctor, what did she do then? She propelled herself down the hallway, met with her parents, laughed, had dinner, watched TV, talked on the telephone. God forbid. She's not curled up in the fetal position, wailing, self-flagellating constantly for 3.5 years. She's acting like a human being trying to exist. But they go through the records and they want to get those dates and use them against her. Manipulation. And then you consider we're 3 weeks away from a trial. The guy yesterday that's looking up to the heavens while he's testifying, Caesar, tells you that he wanted to establish a rapport. Can you imagine? You know that you're 3 weeks away from your murder trial, and you know that this is doctor number 3 who's been hired by the government to come in and evaluate you and testify against you, and he's going to establish a rapport. There is no rapport, but yet he was cooperative, she was friendly. Interestingly enough, just like the treating doctors don't talk to each other, they don't communicate with each other, they don't have access to medical records. She signs the HIPAA forms. They don't know what her records are, but they know for sure what Dr. Resnick had in his report. They know for sure what Dr. Zeisel had in his report. They know for sure what Meg Spinelli had in her report, and they incorporate that into their report. But then you have the MMPI and the other psychological tests that were administered to her on the second day of the Mac Heilbrunn team interviewing, interrogating, questioning her. She passes the MMPI. Testimony is presented. She answered the MMPI honestly. And they're pertaining to state of mind. They're pertaining to questions about what occurred. They're questioning this young lady as to what her state of mind was then, in the middle, and now. And she didn't lie. She didn't malinga. She didn't exaggerate, and more importantly, if anything, she minimizes. But she certainly was off the chart on the suicide scale. And then you have testimony from Dr. Resnick, Dr. Zeisel, Dr. Condon. And they were paid for their testimony. We're all paid, like I said, not the jury so much, but the judge, myself, Chrissy, everybody gets paid. These doctors came in and testified. Phil Resnick, the man is something out of a scary movie. He has the world record of investigating, examining, and treating people in psychosis that kill their children, filicide. He has a world-renowned record for checking fakers to see if a person is malingering. Their doctor agreed that his article on Voices is a leading article with research in the world. Their doctor agreed that he, Bill Resnick, is an expert on malingering. You heard him testify by Zoom because he had surgery. But he showed up by Zoom and testified that, again, 4 months after this incident, he met with Lindsay, he evaluated Lindsay, compared, looked at all the records, just like all the rest of them, everyone says, they looked at all the records, the police reports, grand jury minutes, everything else. He indicates clearly, in his opinion, that she was in a state of psychosis at the time of this death, times 3. Has any of the government doctors rebutted that? One of them, Heilbrunn, said it's possible either way. That's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The other one, Mac, you can accept his testimony if you wish, but I suggest that you probably won't. And then you're left with the doctor yesterday who didn't even know what killing during the course of the psychosis was. And when I was questioning him about it, he agreed. And I said, don't just agree with me. You're just agreeing with me because I said that? And he basically said, yeah. What kind of expert testimony is this? It's a mess. But the government uses them to try to rebut a man like Phil Resnick, who tells you that she was suffering from a horrific mental disease and defect at the time of the killing of her beautiful children. Why? The how? And the fact that under the law, as His Honor has given you, she's not criminally responsible. And the burden is on them right here. Prove to you that at the time of the killing, as Dr. Resnick says, that she was suffering from a disease or defect. As Dr. Zeisel said, that she was suffering from a disease or defect. As Dr. Condi said, she was suffering from a disease or defect. And Condi took you down the road of all of these medications as a psychopharmacologist, as a doctor that specializes in prescription medications. And you got the evidence. So you're able to look at that and determine, see what the side effects are, what she was complaining of, and look at her records. I mean, they have really turned her inside out. I mean, they've got every single text, every single email, every single picture, everything that she did in college. Oh, that's another thing. She lied, according to the guy yesterday that testified, she lied to Pat about being on Prozac. They were dating for 3 months. She's living in Boston. She meets this kid, she thinks that she might like him, and they're dating. Oh, excuse me, before you go out with me, let me tell you that about a year ago when I was studying for my exams, because I'm nervous about talking in public, I got on Prozac. Seriously? That's what the government is arguing in this case. You're gonna have this journal, which talks about her being, this is how controlling she is, manipulation. In the opening statement, you may recall that the district attorney said that she was a hard charging, manipulating woman that was controlling, and everything in their life was controlled. And she ran it to the water, to the carrots, to the beets. You look in this book, and as you might recall, Ms. Rossi testified when asked, did you feel that she was being controlling of you? Because she says, for example, Monday, 10:24, Kellen, put down for a nap. Hopefully we'll nap for 2 hours. If he wakes shortly, let him resettle himself. Bottle when he wakes up. Then it goes on and on. Make salad, romaine lettuce. He likes peppers, broccoli.
Yeah, the Dr. Mack, that was like the epitome of what the prosecution was doing, this trying to prop up and throw everything against the wall they could. I wonder how much they paid that guy. He said he makes hundreds of thousands, a couple $100,000 a year testifying. He wasn't even qualified to take something like this. That just shows their desperation. They wanted numbers. If Lindsay has 2 psychologists and they got to bring 2 or 3 times that number. So it just shows that they don't believe their own experts. They realize their experts are not as good as the defenses.
Cut the sweet potatoes in chunks. Thank you, with the heart. Another good score. You look at her journals that she took. You'll see as you go along in the dates that she's recording in these journals, she's talking about the drugs that she was prescribed. And look at the first page. Look at how detailed. Dates, how she felt, 10 milligrams Prozac, and it goes on like that, goes on through November into December. December 9th, 10th, 11th.
Okay, I'm just...
Horrible, intrusive thoughts. Horrible thoughts.
He's not hit enough, I think, on beyond a reasonable doubt to prove that she was of sound mind. That's basically what the prosecution has to prove, that she was not having any kind of mental health issues that overrode her normal thinking, right? And these kind of drugs and the psychosis from postpartum, all these kind of things, it was a horrific vortex of mind-altering, disturbing, discombobulating neurons in her brain going off. So that's what I would be focused on a lot more, in saying they don't know exactly what's going on in her brain. They aren't the experts like the defenses are. And to sit there that they can go in her mind and know exactly what happened. I mean, and I'd also focus on the fact that you don't live your life a certain way and then suddenly just become a violent killer. Okay. You're not peaceful your whole life and then suddenly become a mass killer, especially of your own children. Okay. Something snapped. And if something snapped, something broke loose in their brain. And so if something broke loose in her brain, then isn't that automatically you're not of sound mind? I mean, that should be like the linear thought process, I would think. And that's something like I would be arguing if I was in his shoes. But so what I've seen from the violence cases I've looked at in decades of criminal law, I can tell you that there's always a pattern. There's always indicators that the person has the potential capability to do something like this. They don't, at her age, suddenly become a mass serial killer when there's no warnings. There's always warnings before that they have propensity. You don't become a loving mother and are a loving person, a loving mother, a labor and delivery person that names your first daughter after your baby you delivered. I think it was a mother's name or the baby's name. I can't remember which it was, but she's like a extremely caring and loving person. You don't go into some homicidal maniac and be of sound mind. So I think it's like very, very much a matter of common sense that something was not right in her brain that day. So, and a lot of people think, well, gee, she was able to plan it in such detail. She was able to tell Patrick to go out of the house and stop and get the meds from CVS. And even he called and she chit chatted with him for a second or a few seconds. And then off he is to go to pick up the food that she ordered. So a lot of people think if you're in a state of psychosis, you're automatically going to be basically drooling, laying on the floor, barking like a dog, kind of wacko kind of things, which I've seen before, by the way, by somebody going into a full schizophrenic meltdown. So I've had a client do that before. So anyway, it's just something I think the prosecution is such a high burden. If the jury follows the law, they're not going to be able to find her guilty of the first degree or even the second degree or even the third or even the manslaughter. So let's continue though.
Thoughts in the AM. Horrible thoughts. Horrible thoughts. No motivation. And then finally, horrible thoughts, no motivation, deeply depressed. Then that's around the time she went to Women and Infants Hospital, right? Looking for help. Look at this. As she runs into January, there's nothing other than little chicken scratches because her mind was gone. In January, as she's on these drugs and she's suffering from what you've heard is postpartum depression that can lead to postpartum psychosis, and you have these men coming in here that don't even know psychosis from schizophrenia as experts, telling you that if a woman doesn't have these symptoms, like it's a disease, symptoms of postpartum depression within 4 weeks, that's it. Lights out. You're not a person that can be considered. You're not a real person for purposes of postpartum depression and or postpartum psychosis. Well, I suggest that he's wrong. I suggest the second guy's wrong and the third guy. Well, actually, I didn't even know. It's your memory. If the gentleman, Mac, even knew, I think he said 4 weeks. It can go up to a year or longer. But we don't really know because you heard the evidence. There's no evidence. There's nothing in the DSM, but that's the Bible. God forbid you should go to Europe. You should look at the World Health Organization records. You should look at the way they treat pregnant women that have problems with their children. No, we're the most advanced country in the world. But we still have doctors that come into court on a murder trial and talk about 4-week cutoff on something that they don't even know exists. They've never treated it. They've never written about it. You have terrorism experts. You have an expert that comes in and talks about his focus and his interests, and it's about juveniles and drugs. And like I said, kids that like to drink and smoke weed. Those are the experts, quote unquote, to support their burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Lindsay was not suffering from a disease or defect at the time she killed her children. You all remember this. October. This is not an evidence, it's marked for identification. It's too big. So, but basically it shows clearly and unequivocally the depths of despair that this young kid was in, trying to raise 3 kids, trying to be a wife, ready to go back to work. Did anyone say that she was just lazy or just didn't want to go back to work? Manipulation. They're arguing. She didn't want to go back to work. She didn't want to go back to work because she didn't want to leave her kids, especially Callan, because she loved her children. They were her life.
I really believe if her family would have said, Patrick said, hey, look, you're not going back to work, period. I think that would have taken off a huge burden of hers. And I think it wouldn't have put her in this tailspin.
Manipulation. And when you consider the journals. I don't know, you ever watched the movie there, The Shining, with Jack Nicholson? Remember the scene when he's sitting there in a state of complete psychosis, and he's writing a book and he's typing?
That's another way that what I was trying to say, Yankee City girl. Mother who had a long history of loving, supporting, and nurturing her children with never an incident or whisper of malice or hostility towards them would have to be psychotic to suddenly kill her own children. Yeah, any kind of abuse of children, there's always a pattern. It's a building pattern. And it's never a wonderful, loving, harmonious family that suddenly they go berserk. It's never that way, unless there's something broke in them mentally, and it's from psychosis / postpartum and the medications that did damage to her brain, just like Dr. Yosef talked about.
And the wife finds the book and opens it up and looks at it and says, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Repeated after repeated after repeated. And he says, do you like it? You look at the records of her Googling.
He's sort of like not really hammering it home here good.
Drugs. You look at how many times, how many hours of the night in the afternoon she's looking this stuff up, in between taking care of the family, in between all of the stuff that was going on with visiting doctors, seeing doctors, going to Rhode Island, being told, no, we can't help you, calling a suicide hotline, we can't help you, calling another suicide hotline, we can't help you. My God, what does she have to do? She was reaching out for help, and she was not getting it. She turns herself in to McLean Hospital. You saw the doctor, nice one. She's testifying. She didn't know. I suggest to you that she didn't know hardly anything, let alone psychosis involving a young lady like her going through what she was going through. The government bears the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. They bring, for example, Ian Whiffen. The guy, you might remember him, was the guy that's, I guess he developed or helped develop Celebrate. What you got when you look at the records, you don't measure on an Apple Watch. Well, I shouldn't say Apple Watch because we know that they didn't have the Apple Watch, but on a cell phone. You don't measure going down the stairs. You measure stair climbing, right? That's what the testimony was. And there were 3 stairs that were climbed. Okay. The last record is 5:38. At 5:38 p.m., we went through that on cross. What happens to the phone? Don't know. It was on the bed. Was it dropped on the bed and it left there for 20 minutes? She could have been anywhere in the house during all that period of time, right? Right? You've got a compressed period of time that Patrick leaves to go to the restaurant to pick up the CV, and you heard the guy yesterday say, and then she sent him off to go to CVS. It's on the way. It's on the way. She didn't want him out of the house long. She was in distress. She wanted him home to help with the baby, to help with the kids, to help putting them to bed. How long is he going to be gone? She Googles it. Is that something that is so nefarious? You'd think that that goes right along the line with the book about good mothers having bad thoughts. My God, she actually Googled the time frame that Patrick would take to go to 3B and pick up the food and then leave. And so
the fact that there was planning involved does not mean that she was not in a state of psychosis or she was of sound mind. I just think a lot of people don't get that.
stop at CVS on the way. So I guess the government is suggesting she's not in a psychosis. So she's Googling Miralax because the doctor earlier that day told her that the baby Cora needed Miralax. Why would she do that? Because remember the government's opening when they told you she wasn't suffering from the psychosis. She was a woman that didn't want to live her life anymore, wasn't happy being a mother, didn't want to live that life. So she's going to kill her kids and hopefully throw herself out the window and not paralyze herself, and then she could run off into the sunset, I guess. That's what their theory was. along with the fact it wasn't a real good suicide, it was fake. Well, now we know, don't we? The mess that this young lady was in her brain, my brain is being damaged.
Think about it. These prosecutors basically spun all this argument that they made through them asking witnesses questions about was this a superficial suicide attempt or not. They kept on going on and on about that. How long was that? A couple weeks worth? And then they turn around and tell the judge, "Oh no, we weren't saying it wasn't a serious attempt at all." So I just have really zero trust in these prosecutors.
I will never be better. That's the evidence. That's the evidence that we have in this case. Burden of proof is on them to prove to you that at the time that she killed these 3 beautiful kids, that she just wanted to move on with her life. And I suggest to you, just as there's no chicken nugget residue, and then when you look at those photographs, there's a slice of a cucumber, there's a slice of a carrot, there's no chicken nuggets in that bowl. Patrick wouldn't know what the kids were eating. She was the one that would cook their dinner. She was in the refrigerator, but the guy yesterday is like, oh no.
So he starts and ends with the chicken nuggets. I don't really understand that.
Patrick said that the child was eating the chicken McNuggets in the bowl. No, she was getting food out for the 2 kids, not the little baby, 2 kids for dinner. There's no evidence that she's lying. There's no evidence that she's malingering. And finally, remember, there was a big deal about whether or not the voices are within the head or whether or not they're outside of the head. Dr. Resnick's article with the largest research on voices malingering in the world indicates that 38% of almost 1,000 people that were examined report voices from inside their head, and it stops. You're going to buy that guy yesterday? He doesn't know what he's talking about. This young lady is not guilty of the killing of her children because she was suffering from a disease and defect, as His Honor instructed you. And they're not going to be able to prove otherwise. And it's their burden, not ours. Thank you.
All right, I would say just in summary, I think he's not doing his greatest. I would give him a grade of maybe like a B minus. But what he did have was he's been consistent throughout. I thought he did, and probably an A. I'd give him as a trial attorney. He got a score of an A throughout this trial. He's 75 years old. So for him to do this also by himself for the most part, he had some help like with his son assisting him behind the scenes, but to go at it this many weeks all by himself at that age, this guy's done a phenomenal job. So she got excellent quality defense here from Kevin Reddington. And I just think that his tying it all together and really hammering home of what it means to have reasonable doubt about what the state of her mind is, I thought he could have done a much stronger job, but I think it's good enough. And like I say, his credibility here today has been carried through from weeks. So I think the jury gets it. They get him. They get it that he's sort of tired, and they know that he's put his heart and soul into this, and he's credible and trustworthy. But is a prosecution going to be able to pull this out when they haven't been shown themselves to be trustworthy or not? Let's go check out the prosecution now. So that's the end of this one here. I'm going to have to jump to, oops, I deleted the wrong one. Oh no, here it is. This one I'm jumping to AP, Associated Press. And I think I'll do this. Okay, yeah, it already is at 1 1/4. Just not, I'll just, like I say, I just don't trust these There she is. watching her counsel. Did he leave those quarters up there?
There's no
I don't really understand the quarters issue.
dispute that Lindsay Clancy was suffering from mental illness and that she tried to kill herself. There's no dispute about that. All of the evidence that you've heard, even the experts that the Commonwealth put before you, say that she was suffering from mental illness and she tried to kill herself.
Yeah.
That's not the issue.
Yeah. Okay. So we got, I think this is a different prosecutor from the beginning. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what happened to their bows? Right? We didn't see their bows today. Have they changed their whole persona for this closing? What happened to their bows? I mean, have they given up on being there as Cora's advocate?
In this trial. The issue is whether, at the time she killed Cora, Dawson, and Callan, she knew the difference between right and wrong, and whether she could conform her behavior to the requirements of the law. This case is not about our mental health system or how it treats women or what's in the DSM-5 and what's not. That's a distraction to get you angry and passionate about an important issue, but an issue that's not on trial here.
All right.
What's on trial here, what the issue is here, is what Lindsay Clancy did
Okay. Well, I can still say, why isn't she also wearing bows to support Cora?
the night of January 24th, 2023, and what her mental state was at the time. And you can use her psychological history and records, the treatment records, to look at both before and after she killed the kids, to look at how she got to that point, what her thought process was, what her motivation was. But it's not the system or the DSM or any of that that caused her to strangle her kids. In fact, she had more access to treatment and care and support than a lot of people do. She had health.
Yeah. And look at kept on making her worse. See how they just sugarcoat all this?
Insurance that covered multiple doctors, multiple specialty programs, treatment at South Shore, at Mass General, her stay at McLean. She had prescription coverage to cover the different trials she went through. She had support at home.
You know, it's also the thing like with psychiatrists, they're MDs, but there's no like objective criteria that they can be judged by as whether they do a great job or not. Think about it. You can have a brain surgeon, you know if they did a great job or not, right? Or someone's got a broken spine and they need to have it fixed, and a doctor does a phenomenal job and fixes their spine. You have like metrics to go by. Here, psychiatry, it's like how do you really judge them if they're competent or not? There's no like objective criteria.
She had 18 weeks of maternity leave with the opportunity to extend that as much as she needed, which is excellent, which is what all women should have. But she had that. She had support from both sides of her family, hers and Patrick's.
Yeah.
The two older kids, Cora.
And they all failed her. That's what makes this case so tragic, is that everybody failed her. Nobody understood it. And I'm not even saying that they knowingly did it. They didn't realize how bad she really was. Even when she made some statements of concern, it never got the adequate attention. She tried to seek out this help by herself for the most part.
And Dawson were in preschool 3.5 days a week. And she had the nanny, Elaine, who helped with Callan 3 mornings a week. And she also helped her with housework and with food prep. This wasn't a woman suffering from a lack of care, a lack of resources. She had an abundance of help, an abundance of care. She had all of that and more. And, you know, this doesn't mean that she wasn't struggling, that she wasn't dealing with mental health issues. She was. She had depression. And whether that's from bipolar or major depressive disorder or postpartum depression, it all boils down to she was depressed, right? And she was trying to deal with that, trying to get help for that.
Prosecutor's looking down at notes, not too much, but she really doesn't have confidence in herself here. She's looking pretty weak, I would say. You got to be stronger as a you got somebody you just got the evidence to just blow them out of the water, and this is how your presentation is. She's not acting mean, but so she's acting differently than her and her ADA partner were during this trial.
But it wasn't the fault of the providers that she was struggling with this or that she wasn't getting better. They were doing the best they could. You have the records, you heard the testimony.
All she's been doing so far is talking about her mental health, right? Her mental health. Well, if you got talked that much already in your opening about mental health, then you got reasonable doubt already, I would say, because you're talking about it so much.
They were doing the best they could with the information she provided them. And that wasn't.
I'm sure they're doing the best they could under the circumstances. And you know what? They don't really know how to take care of people other than do this whack-a-mole with giving prescriptions. It's just whack-a-mole. Here, try this. Here, try this. Maybe up it, go up to 400 grams. I mean, it's just, they're just guessing. They're just guessing. And it's always by a pill, not by saying, what decisions in your life could change to take the stress away? Oh, your biggest stress is going back to work? Gee, why don't we talk about getting this situation resolved so you don't have to go back to work? Can you financially afford not going back to work? How can we help you, your family help you overcome this issue of not going back to work? And you know what? I think if they would have done that, she would be fine after this was all said and done, after she had several months to get stabilized at home, knowing she doesn't have to go back to work.
Always accurate information. That wasn't always the full picture. And they were doing the best they could with her level of cooperation and compliance with the plan. Take her medications. You know from the records.
Still talking about medication, depression, medication. I mean, this is bad. This is bad.
And from the pill bottles, what she was prescribed and how she was supposed to take those medications. And you know from the pill bottles what she actually took. And sometimes those two things didn't align with what she told her providers, what she told Patrick, what she told her mother. You take the Zoloft, for example. The prescription was for one 25 milligram pill a day for 7 days, and then to go up to the 50 milligrams after 7 days. She told Dr. Tufts that she took the pills as prescribed for 7 days, went up on the 8th day to 50 milligrams, and that's when she had the insomnia and the other side effects and symptoms. She told Patrick that she took the pills for 7 days and they had no effect, so she called Dr. Tufts, who then told her to increase the dose. Well, you know what she told Patrick is not accurate because the pill bottle says, take it for a week and then increase it. That was the plan from the beginning. That wasn't the result of a phone call to Dr. Tufts.
There he is, sitting there, just glad this thing's over. He doesn't have to deal with this case anymore here once this argument's done.
And you know what she told Dr. Tufts isn't accurate either because only 7 pills were taken from the bottle. So that leaves you 2 options. Either she took the medication as prescribed, 1 pill a day for 7 days, and then didn't increase it, which she says is what caused the side effects and the insomnia, or what she did was not take it as prescribed. She didn't do it 7 days and ease into it and then increase it. She either missed a dose or increased it early before she was supposed to. Either scenario is not good. She knows as a nurse the importance of following the instructions of your medications.
Not if you can't sleep, not if it makes you feel worse. And what's she talking about? She's still talking this whole time about mental health issues. And I'm just sitting there thinking every second that she's talking about mental health issues, you know that you haven't done your job to prove that she was of sound mind.
She knows how important it is to follow the plan and do what's on the bottle and do what your provider tells you and to give that accurate information to your provider. She didn't say, I went up a dose, went up to 50 too early. Maybe they could have adjusted that and tried the 25 milligram for longer and eased her into it. But no, she told her that she did what.
Yeah, maybe they could adjust it. More whack-a-mole with different types of meds. We'll come up with the right formula, right? We'll come up with the right chemistry to fix your mind. But my gosh, if we don't fix it and we make it worse, then you know what? We can always blame you.
She was told and then went up and had these problems. So you can see that in a lot of the medications she has. You have the pill bottles that were turned in by Patrick, and a lot of them don't even have many pills missing from the bottles. Some of them have none. The Buspar prescription, the first one, there's only 2 pills missing. The second prescription, no pills missing. The Lamictal, she never took those pills at all until the night she tried to kill herself. So there's a lack of compliance there, a lack of follow through, a lack of communication with her providers about what was happening with her and how she was taking the medications. And defense wants you to believe that this is a woman who's begging for help and willing to do anything.
Yeah, she was just faking it, right? She was really feeling great. She just was faking it with these doctors and not really taking the pills because all just faking, right? So what's the point you're making here, counselor?
And everything her providers tell her to do to get better. And she was asking for help. She wanted help. She wanted to get better.
Okay, well now she is telling the truth. Hey, that's great. That's great. You're just helping the defense here.
But she wanted to get better on her own terms, doing things her way, the way she thought she should do them. And as a nurse, she knew that's not
Because these doctors didn't know best. What's best for her, did they?
the right way to approach it. She knew that an accurate medical history, accurate information about your side effects and symptoms, what your thoughts are, that's important for your providers to know. And she didn't do it. And it seems that the reason that she's not necessarily fully compliant and she's doing what she wants to do is she has this desire to be herself again. She just wants to go back to who she was. And she,
This sounds like a defense argument. You're bolstering the defense. Even Reddington didn't come up with that, so.
she wants it now. And she doesn't want any side effects. She just wants to be herself again and wants it now. And that's understandable.
Wow, this is amazing. What happened to these prosecutors being like fire-breathing dragon types? I'm just shocked. Maybe they're hearing all the people that are disgusted with the way they've made this whole process a mockery.
It's relatable to want to get that magic pill that will fix you immediately and you can go back to being yourself.
Well, that's what the doctors a lot of times peddle. Hey, just take this and you'll be fine. You don't have to deal with your problems.
But she knew that's not how it worked. And you know that's what she was thinking because in the searches on her phone, she's searching for things like, which antidepressant works the fastest? How fast does Wellbutrin work? And she's searching all of these different medications for the side effects and symptoms, some of them that she never even discusses with her doctors. And, you know, again, it's relatable that she wants to get back to where she was, but she had discussions with her providers about how these medications work and that it takes time for them to get into your system and it takes time for them to work.
She's still talking about the meds. This is like really bizarre. This is like helping the defense. You're not nailing anything down with this as you trying to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. There's no reasonable doubt about her state of mind, really?
She even texted her mother about that, about how she knew that she had to be patient, that it took weeks for the amitriptyline, for example, to get into her system and worked. And she knew all of this. And she just.
You know, one thing that defense didn't talk about, which is I've talked about on this channel multiple times, is that the interactive effect or synergy effect or whatever you want to call it, when you take multiple drugs close in time, that can really completely set you off with side effects that are not even on either label. So that's how bad it can get if you start mixing drugs or starting and stopping. It's and there's no advanced warnings, right? There's no pill warning box that says, look, if you take Zoloft, then you also take a benzo or SSRI at the same time. There's no test that's ever been done, no studies that ever been done to show what those side effects could be. So it's like a high risk scenario.
She couldn't be patient. She couldn't wait. She wanted disaster. She even told Dr. Tufts, it's a note in the records, that she knew the problem was that she wasn't focusing on one provider and following one plan. She knew that going from doctor to doctor, practice to practice, South Shore to MGH, to different programs, not the best way to deal with the situation. She said it in her own words to Dr. Tufts, I need to stick with one provider and stick with one plan to see if it works. And she actually turned down help from at least 2 locations at various points. We talked a lot about the women and infants records, and you don't have to believe what I say about them or the witnesses say about them or defense. You can look at the records themselves. Page 9, it says right there, Patrick was the one who said over medication was the issue. Not the doctors there, not the people evaluating her. What they put was depression, RO, rule out adverse medication effects. That means they have to look into it to see if medication's a problem. But there's a difference between an adverse.
Why did she have to keep going to different doctors? Because they couldn't help her. Nothing was working. And you're going to blame her for this? And yet you also say she was seeking help. She just wanted to be normal. So you're sort of talking out of both sides of your mouth here.
Effect, a symptom, or a problem with a medication and being over medicated, taking too much of a medication or taking too many at one time. There's a difference there. And women and infants never said she was over medicated. What they also don't do is turn her away. It's not that she went there and they said, can't help you, go away. They told her.
Yeah, think about that. She went down to Connecticut to try to get help down there at some hospital. And you know what Patrick did? He went to go skiing. He went skiing. So that's the level of support she had. And only when the doctor said, you need to come back here and be a part of this plan, did he come back. But his main focus that day was skiing.
In the records, based on the onset of her symptoms, they weren't sure if it was postpartum or peripartum. They saw she had an issue. They wanted to help her. It says there, we offered her. They offered her 3 programs. They offered her the inpatient medical management program. They offered her a partial hospitalization program for general mental health. And they offered her an outpatient program. It shows they put a lot of thought into that, into offering her this care. When they gave her 3 separate options, considering she's a young mom, maybe she doesn't want to be away from home, but we'll give her the option of being in the hospital and get.
So this attorney knows best of what Lindsay should have done for her mental health. Isn't that laughable?
Getting her medications right. But we'll also give her the option of the partial hospitalization where she can, be here.
They gave her all these options, and you know what? She just didn't walk through the right door. So it's her fault. It's her fault.
During the day and go home to her kids in the evening. And then that third option of being an outpatient and being able to be at home with her kids and come in for appointments. It was very thoughtful of them. It was very well planned out to give her.
Yeah, Phoebe, Patrick went to the doctor and told him they were turning his wife into a zombie. That's what she was, a zombie that with no normal thinking processes.
These 3 options. And it's kind of the exact opposite of just turning someone away and saying, go away, we can't help you. And her response, well, I'm going to talk to my provider about it for guidance. And she goes to Dr. Tufts. She sees Gelada at some point. You look at the records, she never discussed those options with them. She told them that women and infants turned her away and said she didn't qualify for the program. She didn't discuss those 3 programs that they offered her. So basically, they give her this offer of help, 3 different forms of help, and she's just, no, doesn't want to do them and doesn't discuss it with her provider. And also that first time she goes to Mass General, to the emergency room, they offer her a bed at McLean, and she turns it down. She wants help. No one's saying she doesn't want help, but she's making these decisions and doing these things that aren't helping
Well, she's also on these psych meds. She wasn't of clear mind in any of those 4 or 5 months.
her get help, that are turning away help because she wants the help in a certain way, in a certain time frame. And, you know, all during this time, between September and December of 2022, she's interacting with friends, with family, teachers, gym staff, the nanny, people at gymnastics, interacting with them in public spaces, in public ways, driving her kids around, all throughout that time, able to know the difference between right and wrong, able to conform her behavior to the law and to the requirements of society, and interacting with others and presenting herself as a functioning adult, a functioning mom.
Because she was trying to push through and live a normal life, but behind the scenes is where she was really struggling. So she just doesn't get it.
You know that she knew the difference between right and wrong during that time because she had those thoughts at the beginning of December of harming her kids. And she told Patrick and her mother about them. But
Because she was in a psychotic state of mind. She wasn't looking forward to killing her kids and getting on with a great, wonderful life.
didn't tell is important and very telling. She didn't tell a single provider, not Tufts, not Gelada, not Jennifer McAllister, not Dukes, no one at McLean, no one at MGH, no one at South Shore, didn't tell any of them. And why? Because the police might take away her kids. That's a rational thought, that telling mandated reporters that you're having a thought of harming your kids, that they might be taken away for their safety, that's a rational thought. And it also shows she knew it.
So it's rational to be telling your provider that you have thoughts of harming your kid?
It was a bad thought, a wrong thought, because
she knew it was a bad thought, that means she was of sound mind, really?
you don't think someone's going to take your kids away because you're thinking something positive or neutral. It's because it's bad. It's because it's wrong. It's because it's against the law. So she knew that it was wrong.
This is just so weak. Really a flat argument here. All you are is talking about how she should have gotten better mental help. But you know what? That's helping the defense, because she didn't get the best mental help. If she would have seen Dr. Joseph, she would have been fine through this. Now, granted, when I say fine, she still has this underlying bipolar thing to deal with, but she'd be back to having a mostly normal life.
And she was able to conform her behavior to the law because she didn't tell those providers. She went in and met with them and talked about what she was experiencing and talked about her depression. And not only did she not tell them, she lied to them. They asked her, are you having thoughts of harming others? Do you have homicidal ideation? She told Tufts no. She told Gelada no. She told Dukes no. She told Goodhart no. Every day at McLean, she said no. At MGH, she said no. So not only is she hiding it, she's lying about it. She's controlling her behavior.
She's trying to get help. She's not trying to be some con person, trying to dupe these people because she has ulterior motives down the road to kill off her kids.
She's controlling the presentation she presents to her providers.
I just don't see the jury liking or believing anything she's saying that's trying to make it look bad for Lindsay. I think this is actually surprisingly weak closing, that I think it's helping Lindsay more than it's hurting her.
And then we get to her being admitted to McLean. You know, up to that point, all of the drugs she's taken from September through December, they weren't given at the same time. The most she ever had at one time was 2 to 3 medications. And usually if it was 3, that third medication was the Benadryl or the hydroxyzine that's like Benadryl, or the Ativan or Valium as needed for anxiety. But most of the time it was 2 medications. And the way they did those medications, you heard from Dr. Satoff, a man who's examined thousands of patients with psychosis, who's treated women with postpartum psychosis, who's treated women who have killed their children, that man who apparently has no expertise. You heard from him that the medication trials were reasonable and rational. She tried a medication, it didn't work, or they had side effects, they stopped the medication. They tried something else. They tried a different combination. And unfortunately, with mental health, there's no blood test or CAT scan or MRI that you can do.
That's right. You have no idea what actually is going on in her mind. You just hurt your case here, which is good because I think you don't have a good case as a prosecutor. So thank you.
That says, well, you have bipolar or you have schizophrenia. It unfortunately doesn't work like that. So what the providers have to do is rely on what the patient's telling them. Hope that information's
Oh, and then they know exactly what to do to fix it, right?
accurate. Rely on what they're observing about the patient and make a diagnosis. And then based on that diagnosis, have a treatment plan. And every patient reacts differently to medication.
I think the jury's picking up that these prosecutors are changing their game. They're not coming across as credible, trustworthy.
One patient could do fine on it, the next not. So they have to do that trial and error process, and it's normal, it's typical, it's reasonable. And that's what they did for her. And even if you believe that the number
This is a triple murder case, and all you're talking about so far is Lindsay's treatment and what she could have done better. Unbelievable.
of different medications she took over that time, or the combination of those medications affected her negatively. After McLean, they were out of her system. Some of them had been out of her system for months. Zoloft, she stopped in October. Other pills, she stopped in November
But like Dr. Yosef said, that damage to your brain lingers on.
or December. And that last one, the Seroquel, that she really had a bad reaction to, is out of her system. You only
I'm really feeling good. Yeah, I'm feeling good that this prosecution is actually helping the defense.
only medication she's on leaving McLean is trazodone for sleep and Valium for anxiety. And that's it when she leaves there.
Yeah, hey, that's a great point. You know what, Jamin, you're saying after starting with this is not about mental health. That's right. I remember that in their opening, they're saying this is not about mental health. She was just being controlling. Remember they talk about her being a control freak and what was the other thing they said? Control freak and manipulating. And when because she couldn't control things the way she wanted to, she decided to kill her kids. I mean, it was just such a crackpot opening.
And why does she leave there? He wants to go to Corey's birthday party. And that's relatable. That's understandable. She wants to be that mom again who can throw her daughter a party and enjoy it.
That's true. Yeah, that is truthful. Glad you're being truthful on so much of this. Even though you are trying to minimize the medication, but
It's completely understandable why she would want to leave, but she also knew she wasn't there. She knew how she was feeling. She knew she was depressed. She knew she needed help. But she wanted to be that mom she was more. And there was nothing
this is helpful. I can't believe you're saying all this to help. I guess you have a conscience now.
McLean could do to keep her there. She said she denied suicidal ideation. She denied homicidal ideation. She said she wasn't hearing voices or seeing anything. They saw the entire time she was there, no signs of psychosis. In fact, every doctor she saw, from Tufts in September all the way through Tufts at January 23rd, None of them saw any signs of psychosis ever. So they're all wrong. All these different doctors at all these different practices, they're all collectively together wrong. That doesn't make sense. She shows when she's leaving McLean, no signs of psychosis. And they even give her.
None of them made her well, did they? They just threw medicine at her. None of them tried to help her fix the problem.
A test.
They never had her committed as an inpatient.
A task to do to see if she can manage her mental health outside of the hospital. Make an appointment, pick a doctor, make an appointment. And she does it. She decides on Dr. Tufts. She makes the follow-up appointment. She gets the documentation and gives it to them, showing she can manage her mental health. They have to let her go at that point. She's there voluntarily. There's no grounds to keep her if she's not showing she's a danger to herself or others. So they let her go home. And at home, again, all throughout January, she's showing her ability to know right from wrong and to conform her behavior to the requirements of the law in all the activities she does in January. First, there's the birthday party.
You're not discussing how the intrusive thoughts can override things that are otherwise normal throughout the day.
She's throwing the birthday party. She's monitoring the kids, making sure, typical mom birthday party stuff. Everyone's eating, getting cake, singing happy birthday. You saw her in the video. She appeared happy and smiling, normal. Everyone that interacted with her said, seemed a little tired, but okay. The Museum of Science, you have that video. The Museum of Science in Boston can be crowded and overwhelming on a good day. And she's there with 3 kids under 5 with her husband. You see her monitoring them, caring for them, doing the exhibits, showing them what to do with the exhibits. If you watched that video and you didn't know who the Clancy family was, and we asked you, pick out the woman who is depressed, pick out the woman who wants to kill herself, pick out the woman who's about to kill her kids, you couldn't pick her out. She's completely calm.
What do you know about somebody going through what she was going through? What is she talking about?
Her behaviors are typical and normal because she's able to control her behavior. She's able to be suicidal and
she's able to control her behavior and be calm and rational and sleep well and act well. And she's just looking forward to going back to work, right? That's what you're going to try to make this jury believe.
feel those things, but control her behavior, control her thoughts, and present that image to the world. She's able.
I mean, she's just sort of faking it, just like you're sort of faking you got a strong case here.
To do it at the Cape Codder as well. Similar scenario. She's able to watch the kids when Patrick goes to brunch. She's able to watch the boys when Patrick and Cora go skiing on the 16th. She's able to interact with the Carneys on January 22nd. And yeah, they both initially said she was quiet, but then they both admitted she was always kind of quiet. But she was able to interact with them, chat with them in the kitchen, seemed okay. In between January 7th and January 21st, her mother never comes to the house to intervene. Her sister, a licensed social worker, a mandated reporter, never comes to the house to intervene or help, never makes a report. And they're in contact with her every day, texting with her, calling with her almost every day, and never see any signs that they should be concerned or worried or intervene. And you have those text messages.
Yeah, because that's what happens when they get closer to doing the actual act. They actually feel better. That's part of the thing with suicide and homicide, especially if you're on psych meds.
Is between the defendant and her mom. And her mom obviously was very attentive, very caring, asked very pointed questions. How are you doing? How are you sleeping? How are the medications? Obviously a very concerned, loving mom. How does Lindsay answer? I'm getting a little better. I'm sleeping better. She said the only time her sleep was interrupted is if Cora had a bellyache or one of the kids was up. But she's doing better every day. She's sleeping better. She's feeling better. She still says, I'm not myself. I'm not where I want to be, but she's moving in the right direction.
Really? Okay. Glad you can size it all up and come up with a proper diagnosis.
And we have that text from her mom the day she leaves on the 22nd, headed back home. I'm glad to see you're doing so much better. Now her mom.
Yeah, because she's realizing it's not going to last long and she's looking forward to ending her life.
Now wants you to believe that she lied to her, that she wasn't doing better and she was just trying to encourage her. But there are so many things you can say to your daughter who's struggling with mental health other than lie to her if you want to encourage her. You've got this. Take it day by day. I'm here for you. We're going to get through this. But she wants you to think she lied to her when she said she was doing better. But you know that wasn't a lie. You know that she was doing better, or seemed to be, and that her mom said, I'm glad you're doing so much better, because Patrick said the same thing. He said she was doing better in January. Every day was better. The 24th was the best day. They had hope because that's what she wanted to show them.
She wanted to show him she wasn't actually feeling better, right? She just got tired of always saying, no, I'm not doing better. I'm not doing. So some people can just do that. Just like, you know what? I'm just going to say I'm fine, even though I'm feeling worse and worse every day. Yeah. High functioning. Yeah. That's a good way to say it.
The only person during that time that she gave even a little glimpse of maybe she wasn't doing that much better was Dr. Tufts. And she told Dr. Tufts that she was feeling depressed, which is why Dr. Tufts prescribed the 10 milligrams of amitriptyline a day.
She's still talking about her mental state. This whole closing argument by the prosecution is about her mental state.
Very low dose. And then
and what her medications were and how they should have been affected and making her fine. She's actually doing better in January. I mean, this is really bizarre.
Told Dr. Tufts again, still not helping. And so Dr. Tufts raised it to the 20 milligrams. Again, a very low dose, a dose a child could take. And that shows how cautious and conservative Dr. Tufts was being in the treatment of this patient who had had those interactions with medications previously.
The doctor who is 1 month into the practice.
She was being cautious and conservative and acting with care for the patient by slowly increasing the medication. But even with Dr. Tufts, she still denied having a suicide plan, denied wanting to hurt anyone else, denied voices, denied visual hallucinations.
And that's all part of what they do near the end of their life, a lot of them. It's not linear. It's not, everybody acts the same way. Like I said, some people can have great reactions to some of these meds, even though they blunt your true emotions. But others, it can just completely wreck and destroy their brain. So I don't understand why that is, but that is just a fact.
Showed no signs of psychosis all the way up to January 23rd. Nothing. And if you look at their journal, you look at this journal that defense counsel showed you, she's very detailed, excuse me, about when she took medication, what she took, the amounts she took, what the effect was for months, starting in October and going all the way up to January. And where it stops, January 18th. Someone who's been so meticulous about everything all the way up to January 18th, and it just stops. It's as if she's decided she's done trying. She's decided that it's too much and she doesn't want to do it anymore. And so she just stops keeping track of the prescriptions. And then we get to January 24th. everything that happened that day, every person she interacted with, every situation she was in, shows you she knew the difference between right and wrong, and she could conform her behavior to the law. The doctor's appointment first thing in the morning. She's able to drive
This is a very weak closing so far.
there. She's able to interact with medical professionals. She's able to seem absolutely fine and normal. And this is a doctor who's treated the kids since Cora was a baby. This is a pediatrician who's known the family and has known Lindsay for almost 5 years. A woman who's trained in recognizing the signs of postpartum depression. She told you she looks for flat affect, she looks for teariness, and some other things that she told you. She saw none of that. She was able to control herself.
Yeah, flat effect. That's what I feel like this closing is for the prosecution.
And interact with her in a perfectly normal, concerned mother way. Able to get home from that appointment. She plays with the kids. She takes them outside. She's sending those messages and photos to her mom and to Patrick, basically saying, look, this is a good day. I'm having a good day. Everything's good. I'm getting better. Here's proof. This is what I'm doing. You start to see the planning at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. When this is on her phone, you can see her search for Miralax, kids Miralax at 4:02. And then a little while later at 4:13, you see her search for takeout from 3V. And then immediately after, she does the Apple Map search to see how long it takes to get to 3V. Well, defense wants you to believe that, she was checking that because she didn't want him gone for too long. She wanted him home. She was in distress. If you're in distress, don't send him anywhere. Make food at home, have him cook, get delivery, get DoorDash. Go to one of the other restaurants that Patrick mentioned that were 2 minutes down the road.
What?
And she didn't have to look up on Apple Maps to see where this restaurant was. You heard from Patrick, they had been there at least 3 times in the months before. She had lived in that area for 4 years. She knew where it was. She knew generally how long it would take to get there. What she needed to know was how long specifically on that night it would take to get there. Because she knew she would have a limited amount of time to do what she wanted to do. And what she had decided to do was to kill the children and then kill herself. And so she needed to know, not generally, but exactly how much time will I have. And then obviously sees that that's not enough time. So then she searches CVS.
So her mind is completely fried, but she has an hour of clarity where she knows she can kill her 3 children and then wind up in prison the rest of her life. That sounds like a sound mind to me.
And not only does she search CVS, she calls them and asks them if they have kids Miralax, and they say no, but they have Pedialax and one other medication. And then she asks, is it in stock? Because she needs to know not only what they have, but is it in stock? Because she's adding to this errand that she's sending Patrick out on. And she has to make sure she's not interrupted. She doesn't want that call at 5:33. She wants him to go to CVS and have the medication there and get it, and then go on to 3V, so she has time to do what she needs to do. So that's why she's calling to see what they have and make sure it's in stock. It's a level of planning there and thinking and decision-making that Dr. Satoff referenced. And then
Boring.
after
It's just such a boring closing. There's no passion here. Somebody was saying, "Oh, when is Reddington talking about the 3 kids?" Well, he did in his opening, in the beginning, very beginning. What a tragedy it was. All right, she's just talking about walking through all of her mental health history, which shows she was trying to get help. So this is like a phase 2 of a defense closing for the most part.
that, she texts Patrick, it's been a long day, can we do 3V? And he's on board with that. And she's like, okay, check out the menu. Let's get on this. And he asks her what she's getting. She tells him the Mediterranean Power Bowl. He says he's getting the pork belly risotto. 5:10 p.m., she's calling that order in. She's talking to the hostess.
It's so boring.
She gets the order accurate. She is able to answer questions about how she wants her food.
The jury's just got to be like, really? This is all you got?
She's able to recall and give Patrick's phone number and his name as the person picking up. And then Patrick's leaving to go get the food. And as he's leaving, the kids are in the living room on the couch eating. The defendant's in the doorway near the basement door. And
Yeah, she leaning on this lectern there with her right elbow. She's even getting tired. You need to wrap it up, counsel.
she says to him, oh, basically, oh, by the way, can you go to CVS? Acting like it's this last minute thought, like, oh, by the way, can you get this? And not something that she's been planning for over an hour. She knew about the Pedialyte and she knew about 3D and she knew all of that before she even asked him about dinner. But it's like, oh, can you go to CVS on your way and get kids Pedialyte? And he, of course, is like, sure, I'll get that. And he heads out the door at 5:15. And you know that's the time he leaves because he says to her, yeah, just text it to me. And that's such a normal kind of interaction that we have in your common sense and life experience. You're headed out the door to run an errand and someone in your home says, oh, while you're out, could you get me X, Y, and Z? And you're like, yeah, sure, just text it to me. Because you don't want to get there and be like, oh, what did they want me to get? It's such a normal interaction, right? Can you get this for me? Sure, text it to me. And he heads out the door and she texts it to him at 5:15 p.m. And then he goes to CVS, even though she's told him what to get and they have it, he still makes that call at 5:33. She calls him back at 5:34. And then he heads out to 3V and then comes home. And when he gets home, puts the things on the counter and it's quiet. It's quiet in a way that a house with 3 kids under 5 should not be during waking hours. So he calls out to them, no answer. He goes to the basement door and opens it and yells down and no answer. And he closes the door. He calls her phone, no answer.
I'm not feeling bad for this prosecutor. Not at all.
He goes upstairs and is able to unlock the door and see the blood and see the window open and go down to her. And when he goes down to her, she's no longer actively bleeding. He doesn't have to put pressure on any of her wounds. And he says to her, what did you do? And her response is, I tried to kill myself. And then it's, where are the kids? In the basement. It's not, I heard a voice. I was compelled to do this. I didn't want to do this. Go help the kids. They're hurt. They're in the basement. Go save them. No, it's, I tried to kill myself. And the kids are in the basement. And defense wants you to believe that conversation couldn't have happened because of how she sounded on the 911 call. But you heard from the doctors, people can deteriorate over time. When he first gets there, she's able to talk to him. And as that progresses, she's losing the ability to talk. And there's nothing in the medical records about her throat being crushed or her thyroid being crushed. You can look at that. Her thyroid was bruised. Her vertebrae were broken, but her throat wasn't crushed. She had the ability to make sound and to communicate. And if you listen to the 911, he's talking to her, and then he's answering the 911 dispatchers about what she said. So even if we can't hear her clearly and we can't understand what she was saying, he could. You know from all of the evidence that you have, putting aside the experts, but all the evidence you have in terms of crime scene photos and videos and the witness testimony and all the medical records, you know how she killed them, where she killed them, what time she killed them, and the order that she killed them in.
You went into every excruciating detail, even though the defense conceded. You just tried to bring out all the gore you possibly could, you and your partner.
Even without what she told the doctors about the order, that's something you can infer from the evidence. Because you know, in order to bring the kids to the basement and strangle each one of them, and then come upstairs and get a knife and have.
How could a loving mother switch to being such an extreme violent person unless something snapped in your brain and you weren't of sound mind? That's the only thing that makes sense.
A phone call and then go upstairs to the second floor and either take handfuls or pills or crush them, however she did it, take the pills and then cut herself. And it's not just 3 cuts, it's the hesitation marks and then the cuts themselves. And then, you know, she bled in a couple spots for a little while.
Oh, hesitations. They're going back to, oh, this was a fake suicide, right? So which is it? They can't stick on a theory. Here they are waffling again.
Because you heard from Sherry Kirkhope, the pooling in front of the mirror is someone, basically the blood dropping down and someone there for a period of time. And then over closer to the window, the same thing. So she's bleeding in front of the mirror for a period of time, over by the window for a period of time. And then she goes out of the window. And whether she dove out or climbed out and slid down, whatever you think that evidence shows.
Oh, so now you're switching it. Before it was, she did the slow crawl out the window, trying to minimize the fall kind of thing. And now you're saying it could be either or. So this is just so lame.
and the shingles and everything you've seen, whatever happened,
What do you think the evidence shows? How about you? You have a theory that sticks from the beginning to the end that you don't deviate from.
she goes out of the window and she's on the ground. And by the time Patrick gets there, she's no longer bleeding. So for all of that to happen in that short amount of time while Patrick's gone, she had to have started killing the kids immediately after he left. Now, defense wants you to believe that it was after the phone call, that after the phone call, she heard the voice and killed the children. But there's a few things about that don't make sense. First is what she told Dr. Satoff, that when she gets the call, she's at the fridge getting chicken nuggets out of the fridge to make dinner. You heard from Patrick, when he's leaving, Dawson is sitting on the couch eating chicken nuggets and green beans out of a bowl. There's the crime scene photo of 2 bowls on the couch. Yes, the pink one seems to have some vegetables in it, but there's the blue one there as well. And Patrick saw Dawson eating the chicken nuggets and green beans. So why would the defendant make that up? Why would she say she's doing that during the phone call? Because if she's already killed the kids because of a voice and being compelled and it being against her will and she's like a puppet, then she can't get a call and miss it and then call the person back and have a conversation and then hang up. A puppet can't do those things. Those are decisions and choices and actions that she's controlling.
You can be extremely well controlled and very scripted when you're in an extreme state of psychosis. And you can be a very precise and effective killer and murder of people, and if you're in a state of psychosis. She just doesn't get that.
So she has to explain away the phone call because her behavior and her ability to have the phone call don't make sense. If she's
Does she sound impassioned and really credible the way she's arguing this? She's really not even arguing this. We're speeding this up, but she's talking very slow and just has no fire in her belly.
being compelled by her voice,
She's not coming across convincing at all.
if she's not in control. And you, further on that, you have the phone. You have the flights climbed. There were 2 flights climbed. You can see, you have Ian Whitten's report, you can see there were 2 flights climbed. The first ends at 5:33. So it makes sense that she has killed the kids in the basement and she has come up the stairs, and at 5:33, she's in the kitchen and she's getting the knife. And then Patrick calls. Everything she's done, everything from the research to making sure what they had, to telling him to get it, to making sure it's in stock, all of that, and he still calls her, he still interrupts her. And then she gets the knife and she goes upstairs and she's at the top of the stairs by 5:38. So the phone calls from 5:33 to just before 5:35. So if you want to believe that the voice happened after the call, and the killing of the kids happened after the call, between 5:33 and 5:38, she doesn't go down and come back up and come back up and come back up. There's nothing on that phone about that. And there wouldn't be enough time for her to bring those kids down to the basement and strangle each one in 3 minutes. You heard from the doctors, and Dr. Lapisado included, it could take up to 30 seconds for each child to go unconscious. And then strangulation would have to continue for another 1 to 2 minutes to cause death. And Dr. Lapisado wanted you to believe that the band could just stay there around their necks by themselves. But you have the bands. They're exercise bands. You pull them, they resist, you let go, they snap back. I had to hold them up to show her. And it circles like around someone's neck. And when I let go, they expanded. They don't stay around someone's neck on their own. You have to pull them. And you know they weren't knotted. Patrick never testified that they were knotted. So I'll take this one. He testified that he didn't have a clear memory, but he remembered that they were possibly looped. And I asked him, like, when you're tying your shoe, that first loop before you do a bow? And he said, yeah, kind of like that. So not knotted, not tied, but even his memory wasn't the best. You heard him on that call. And that's why we had to play the call for you, because you could hear him. You could hear when he found each kid. And you knew that he had the phone with him when he found each kid, because his voice, it never sounded like he was in another room. It always sounded so painfully right there. And so you know he's holding the phone and he's not untying knots, and he wouldn't have had the time to untie knots in that short amount of time. And then you have the firefighters looking in the window, seeing him with Dawson.
But I thought this was such a far trip that he had to take CVS and also going to pick up the food. If this could happen in a short time frame like that, now you're saying there's not enough time, that it happened before the CVS phone call. I just don't see what they're trying to drive here.
If he's not untying a knot or unlooping something, they say they see him in an unwinding motion, unwrapping. That's why you had to listen to the 911, to show that she did stand over their limp bodies and strangle them for 1 to 2 minutes after they went unconscious, because those weren't knotted, they weren't tied.
And you're saying there wasn't enough time to do that? I just don't see what they're driving here.
They don't just stay there on their own. And even if you wanted to believe that at 5:38, she goes upstairs and puts the phone on the bed, and then she goes down and kills the kids, and she does everything. 5:38 to just after 6 p.m., because he's making the call to her at 6:09. There's not enough time between 5:38 and just after 6 p.m. to kill all 3 kids, to get the knife, to take the pills, to cut herself, to bleed, to go out of the window, to stop bleeding, and Patrick to get there. In 20 odd minutes, it's not enough time. So you know she killed those kids as soon as he left. And when she got the call from him, she had already strangled them. And she didn't tell him. She didn't ask for help. She didn't say, oh my God, what have I done? She's a nurse. She didn't go down and try to do CPR and help them. No.
She's in psychosis. That's why none of this makes sense to you, because you don't understand psychosis and psychotropic drugs and deep depression, postpartum depression.
She lied. She stayed calm. She presented herself as normal. She had complete control over her behavior and her emotions. She had a normal conversation with him because she didn't want him coming home, because she needed to finish her plan. She still had to kill herself. So why did she do it? Defense would have you believe that a mother who was this good, who loved her kids this much, which we're not denying, would never harm her kids this way unless she was so.
What, you just admitted that? Let me back that up.
So why did she do it? Defense would have you believe that a mother who was this good, who loved her kids this much, which we're not denying, would never harm her.
We're not denying that? So you basically agreed she loved the kid. So the only thing that makes sense is something got broken in her brain.
Her kids this way unless she was so mentally ill that she was hearing these command voices and had no choice. But that's not the world we live in. Dr. Resnick told you, most women who kill their children do it in child abuse. Most women who kill their children don't do it because of mental illness. Mothers kill their children, and it's horrible and it's awful, but it happens. So why did she specifically do it? She was depressed. She was exhausted. She was done. She didn't want to try anymore. She felt damaged. But those.
Wait a minute. Before you said it was because she was controlling. Because she was selfish and controlling. Yeah, selfish, I think, was the two things they said. Selfish and controlling in the opening. So now they've changed it.
Kids. Those kids were her protective factor. Those kids were keeping her from ending her misery. And so she had to remove the protective factor. And I'm not saying she was happy about it. I'm saying that it was what she had to do to end her misery. But it was a choice. It was a choice. She could have kept trying. She could have, moved down to her mother's. She could have killed herself and left her kids alive. But it was a choice to take them with her. It was a horrible choice. And it's a choice that.
Yeah, it was a sane, rational, totally coherent, nothing wrong with her mind whatsoever.
That we don't want to think about that a mother could make, because that doesn't make us feel safe or comfortable in this world. But it's a choice she made. She knew it was wrong because she sent Patrick out to do it. She could conform her behavior because she waited until he was gone and didn't tell him what was going on in those phone calls, didn't call 911.
Even people that commit suicide know how to set things up. They know how to set things up and be planning right up to the time it happens. So this is the same thing if it's a suicide / homicide, or homicide, I should say, / suicide, or what this turned out to be a attempted suicide.
Help, didn't lock herself in a bathroom upon hearing this voice. She knew it was wrong.
Okay, so she should have locked herself in the bathroom. Oh, I'm tempted to kill the kids, so I'm just going to lock myself in the bathroom. I mean, does that make any sense? How do you lock yourself in the bathroom? To keep yourself from getting out? That doesn't even make any sense.
She didn't take advantage of this situation. She created this situation, this opportunity to do what she wanted.
Oh, is that the selfish and controlling part now?
And when she woke in the hospital, and she knew she was alive and the kids weren't, she knew what she did was wrong. She said she felt horrified. And then, while still with a tube in her throat, she's asking, do I have a lawyer? And it's not what defense said. It was after surgery, and she's delirious. Look at the records. She had surgery on the 27th. She's asking if she has a lawyer on the 26th. Do I have a lawyer? Because she knows what she did was wrong. And then we get the justification, the excuse of the voice. And there are a few reasons why the voice doesn't make sense. The first is she immediately obeyed it. Dr. Resnick, their expert, the one who knows everything about postpartum psychosis. He teaches other psychiatrists and psychologists. He writes books and chapters and articles about how this is a huge red flag if someone immediately obeys a voice. You heard him talk about Andrea Yates, about how she heard voices to kill her children for months. And what did she do? She committed herself 5 times. She tried to kill herself twice to avoid harming her children. That was all accurate.
Let's move on from that.
Lindsay Clancy?
Yeah, let's see, what's this about? She committed herself 5 times.
She tried to kill herself twice to avoid harming her children. That was all accurate.
Let's move on from that.
Lindsay Clancy?
Did defense object or something? I didn't catch that. But I'm glad the judge told her to move on.
Hears his voice one time and does it. Doesn't try to lock herself in the bathroom, call Patrick, call 911. Doesn't try to leave.
How do you lock yourself into the bathroom? Don't you lock other people out? How do you lock yourself in the bathroom?
You know, yeah, leaving little children alone for 20, 30 minutes, not the greatest option, but it's better than killing them.
She said, do I need a lawyer? Like, what's going on? Do I need a lawyer? She didn't ask for a lawyer. It's like a rhetorical question. Like, what are y'all doing here? So again, I think another spin move here.
She doesn't try any tactics to avoid the voice. She just obeys. Another red flag that Resnick was asked about.
That's what they do in a psychotic state. They act on the command.
And teaches and writes about is that she only heard the voice one time. She never heard it before, and she hasn't heard it since. So how that works. It's a red flag that she's making up the voice. Another one is that
she's making up the voice. Really? How do you know that? What have you done to discount it? Doesn't that sort of make sense? Based on what happened, doesn't that sort of make sense?
Said the voice holder isn't consistent. At the hospital, she says the voice said you have to kill your children so you can kill yourself because they'll suffer without you. What she tells a lot of the doctors is it says this is your last chance. You have to kill the kids so you can kill yourself. And then she tells the chaplain a third version, you have to kill the kids so you can kill yourself because they're in danger. There's these 3 different versions. Another flag that
they can all be consistent, and every person can remember it differently as well. So this is just
red flag. It doesn't make sense that the voice, she's saying the voice says all these different things. And then the fourth thing that doesn't make sense about the voice is that it's vague in its command. It doesn't tell her how to kill the kids, where, with what, nothing. It says kill the kids so you can kill yourself. So she had to choose where, the basement. She had to choose how, strangulation. She had to choose with what, exercise ban. Choose again, exercise ban. Choose again, exercise ban.
Yeah.
She had to choose how to kill herself. Now, if you're being compelled by this voice and you have no.
Yeah. Just me, you're saying, unfortunately, the judge would not allow any testimony regarding experiences of postpartum depression, which is really, I think, sad because these doctors, they've never experienced postpartum, number one. They've only heard about it or learned about it through teaching or having patients. And it is a rare thing for a lot of people, but not allowing somebody to say, this is actually what I went through, and I was going through exactly what Lindsay went through, I think is wrong. I think it should be admissible.
Free will whatsoever. You're just your body's acting on the voice. Why wouldn't you just kill yourself the same way you killed the children? You strangled them, you hang yourself.
Because she wanted to be with them in heaven. That's why. That's what she believed she was doing. Is that not deranged thinking?
That's acting on compulsion. That's no choice. She tried 3 different ways, and none of them similar to what happened to the kids. And I'll take this other quarter now and explain to you
3 different ways. You know what? This is like really grabbing this other quarter now.
Why we got into the superficiality of the wounds and why we got.
You know, that's just not a classy move. I just don't like this at all. I think this would turn off some of the jurors as well.
Got into the height of the window and why we got into how she didn't take enough pills to actually kill herself. We're not saying she didn't want to kill herself. We're talking about.
So is this you thinking and telegraphing the jury that you're winning these arguments you're making?
that third prong of suicidality that Dr. Sackhoff talked about. Remember, he talked about aloneness and feeling burdensome, but that third category, capability.
Let's go to
She wanted to kill herself,
normal
but
speed
her natural instinct to live was fighting against that.
stuff. And
So she took pills, but you heard the toxicologists, they were all at therapeutic levels or below, except the Seroquel, which was a little elevated. She cut herself.
Seroquel, which is an antipsychotic, has huge side effects for some people.
But you saw the cuts on the meaty part of her arm horizontally. No arteries, no major blood vessels.
Oh, now it's back to the faking. They can't they can't get their arguments straight here.
Didn't need to be stitched the next day. The one on her neck didn't need to be stitched at all. She knew as a nurse, those weren't going to kill her, but she was trying. And then going out of the window, 12, 13 feet, she landed the wrong way and ended up paralyzed on the frozen.
Oh, landed the wrong way. What? So that she would have survived without paralysis? Is that what you mean? Or you mean she landed the wrong way and broke her neck? Meaning she didn't intend to be paralyzed, just bruised, a couple broken bones, but not paralyzed? Which is it?
Ground. But, you know, the idea that falling out of a 12-foot window is going to definitely kill you, not necessarily. And so she wanted to, she was trying, she was.
So it was they had a resuscitator, so it was a serious attempt. So there she is manipulating the jury, just like defense said they would.
Trying in all these different ways, but she just couldn't get over that third prong, the capability of actually killing herself. And that goes against it being a voice. Because if
What are you talking about? But for the intervention of the doctors at the hospital, she would have died.
she's compelled to do it, if this voice is making her do it, she would just do it. There would be no fight. There would be no struggle.
Oh, okay. So this is just ridiculous. This is really corny.
There would be no resistance
You have
to
no
dying.
ability. You know exactly how these people act and think, right? Given her state of mind, you know exactly what she was going through. You have the burden of proof to prove exactly what was going through her mind, and you can't do it.
But there was. I guess the third one is Dr. Zeisel. We've never said that he told the defendant what to say.
Oh, there you go. Grab another quarter.
Not one witness, not one piece of.
So basically, you're stealing coins from the defense counsel. What do you think you're doing? Stealing coins. That's a bad look. That's a real bad look for a prosecutor to be swiping coins. Those are Reddington's coins. Those aren't your coins. What do you think you're doing? Those aren't props you can use. Those are that's actual money. So it's just a very, very underhanded, looks shady. Looks shady. I'll just say it that way.
Evidence. The only person that said that Dr. Zeisel, that we were trying to say Dr. Zeisel told her to make up the voice is defense counsel. He's the only one that asked about it. He's the only one that brought it up. We have never said that in this courtroom, and no witness has said that we've asked.
Well, maybe he knows that you guys are being sneaky, so he just wanted to head off at the pass.
She knew what she did was wrong.
And you actually argued that. She asked for a lawyer, making it sound like she had something to hide. So of course you guys are going to take everything and put a different spin on it. It doesn't fit your theory.
She could conform her behavior to the law and chose not to. And she didn't expect to have any consequences because she expected to die with her children. And we get to
Now it was
what we have
this attempt again. Okay. I don't get this prosecutor.
to prove is that first degree is deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity and cruelty. You know it was deliberate premeditation because of the way she killed them and the way they died. And the order also shows a rationality. The order she killed them in. Because
I can be perfectly orderly and efficient and effective to accomplish the psychotic plan. Does not mean it's not a normal, rational human being.
Cora and Dawson are older. If she had tried to strangle one in front of the other, they would have known this is bad. And they would have tried to intervene or run and hide. And she had a very limited time. She didn't have time to try to find a child who ran off and hid. So taking Dawson first and moving him to a separate room, having Cora stay with Kellen and having Dawson go in another room, that's rational. That makes sense. That's ordered thinking. And we didn't show you that post that she made about Dawson being a handful and not being compliant to show she was a bad mom. We showed it to you because it proves she knew that he was a handful. She knew that he was less likely to be compliant, to just go along. She knew that he might struggle. And so it made sense rationally to remove him and separate him first and kill him first.
This is such a simpleton argument.
And she brought him into that room, into the office, and closed the door. And she wrapped that band around.
I'm just thinking about what Dr. Yosef said is these details of the plan, where it makes it look like it's so calculating, that has no bearing whatsoever to indicate that they were not in a state of psychosis.
His little neck. And she squeezed until he was unconscious. As the blood's pooling in his face and causing those blood vessels to burst, causing him pain and panic and confusion. And defense calls Dr. La Posada to say, no, it wasn't 20 or 30 seconds. It was only 5 or 10 seconds that until he went unconscious. I'm sorry, how many seconds is it okay for them to have been in pain and panic and confusion? How about it wasn't okay for 1 second for any of those children to feel that?
Well, who said it was okay? Nobody said that from the defense it was okay, or none of these doctors said it was okay. Of course, it was horrific for these children and what they went through. But the more horrific it is, the more it actually supports her psychotic state, her mental breakdown, where her mind was fried.
And they all felt it, all for up to 30 seconds. And then she continued strangling their limp bodies for 1 to 2 minutes to make sure they were dead. Deliberate premeditation. And then extreme atrocity and cruelty. The indifference that she showed to their pain, to their struggle.
Shows how psychotic she was. I agree.
To their suffering. Leaving them there on the floor with the
That was not Lindsay. That was something else that took over her mind. I think you proved that.
bands around their necks, completely indifferent, because she had a plan and she was following it through. Just think of
A plan. What was the plan? After they're dead, what was going to happen? She dies, and okay, so that's what's the good that came out of that, right? What's the good of hurting the kids? Because she's trying to protect them. That's what people do when they a lot of times do these murder suicides, because they're in psychosis or having their brain fried from different meds.
that. The being strangled and the pain and the confusion that they're going through, and it's being done by their mom. Their mom is the one that's hurting them. Their mom is the one that's killing them. That's extreme atrocity and cruelty.
Yeah, I agree. In a psychotic state, that's as proof she's in a psychotic state, because that's not her.
She didn't see them in that moment as individual human beings with rights, with dreams, with futures.
Yeah, because she's psychotic.
Individually belonging to them. You heard about the 3 kids. Cora wanted to be a doctor and a mom. Dawson wanted to be a firefighter. Callan never got the chance to dream. Who knows what future he would have dreamed for himself.
It just shows you how sick in her head she was.
She killed them, and she left them there on the floor with the bands around their necks. She didn't bring them up to their beds and put them with their favorite stuffed animal and cover them up gently and lovingly, leaving them peacefully there. No. She left them discarded on the basement floor like broken toys because she was done playing the game. You know to a moral certainty, she is guilty.
Doesn't really
All right, thank you, counsel.
proof
No,
at all.
members of the jury,
I wish the defense would have focused more, as I said, on the law about the burden of proof to prove that she was of sound mind. But, and I'm just paraphrasing what the law says about sound mind, but the bottom line is they have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that she was acting normal minded, that this wasn't overcoming her. So yeah, it's this bobbing and weaving prosecution there, it's really flat. It's really failed, I think, in so many levels. If the jury follows the law, I don't think they convict her. But this is a highly emotionally charged case for so many people. And if I didn't have an understanding of what medicine can do to help or hurt people, then I would probably be going, yeah, there's something really wrong about her. She's probably just evil all along, just faked her whole life. But because I understand and I've seen so many situations of people having mental breakdowns, including that client that tried to kill somebody when she was in high school, at the high school, just had a schizophrenic episode. Yeah, so yeah, as the other ADA still has a bow in her hair. Is that normal for her? I don't think so. I thought they would have had a PowerPoint or something to explain the law better, but they didn't really cover the law very well at all here, which is surprising. Catherine, you're asking, do I think the husband could also be culpable for not really being supportive? For example, going skiing after dropping her off at a psychiatric facility. I don't know if he was just overwhelmed by this whole thing. He's hearing that his wife's bipolar, and he just couldn't handle it, and he's freaked out. So nobody really could step up and understand what she was going through. She couldn't really explain herself. She doesn't know what's going on, who she is. She was like a loss of identity on so many ways and levels. So has the prosecution met the burden of proof on whether she killed the kids or not? Yes, they have. Have they proven beyond a reasonable doubt that she was not suffering from a mental disease or defect and able to understand right from wrong? I don't think the state has done that at all. So if the judge, based on instructing him on the law there, if they follow what the judge says, I think that we would have a not guilty by reason of insanity. I don't think the jury's gonna find first degree. I just think the way the prosecution has handled this case, they don't deserve to have a good outcome for them. I really look at it from Lindsay's standpoint that there's really no great outcome. Her life is ruined. She's going to have a plan that she's going to succeed in whenever she gets the chance to down the road. So I can see a hung jury is probably the most likely outcome. I don't see first degree as necessary. being convicted of all charges what the state wants. I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think when you have prosecutors acting the way they have that they are going to come out on top and get a complete win. So it's going to be something less than a complete win on first degree. I think that's probably the most likely outcome. So it's going to be something less, not guilty of reason of insanity, maybe a manslaughter if they don't want to buy the mental status, the issue. Maybe they'll have some kind of horse trading among jurors where they'll say, okay, well, let's settle on manslaughter, but it may not be done tomorrow. I think that'll let you know there's two different camps. And they may take some time to haggle through it. It could take 5 days or something of jury deliberations. If there's some holdouts that totally believe, like some of the commenters you see, not only in this channel but in others, that they absolutely believe Lindsay is guilty of murder, just flat out murder. That has extreme atrocity and cruelty to make it first degree. But I just don't see how the prosecution has met their burden. But given the fact that this is such a horrible thing to happen to 3 kids, they may react on emotion and not the evidence and the law. So it's just very unusual to have a case like this. I've not had a case where the defense was not guilty by reason of insanity. They did not get the involuntary intoxication defense in there, so she cannot have a complete acquittal and be able to leave the courtroom without anything hanging over her head. Hostile workplace. You're saying you checked in a mental hospital due to a hostile workplace. That's exactly what they did. Use pills, pills, pills. That is the norm. Catherine, is a psychiatric prison better than a normal prison? I would say most times it is, but you have a lot. It's a very creepy, weird place. I would say I've never been to one, but I would expect to be a really weird, creepy place. A lot of scary people around there. But if it's a hung jury, I think they're going to go through this whole process once again. Yeah, there's no good outcome for this case. You know, a normal case, we're either cheering on for a conviction that's finally happened or an acquittal that should have happened and somebody was wrongfully prosecuted. This one here, it's just there's no good outcome. I've just said that I think the prison, for Lindsay's sake, they're not going to be able to handle her. All the staffing it would take, prisons aren't capable of dealing with somebody like her who's paralyzed that extensively. So I think in the end, she'll wind up someplace other than a prison, even if they find her guilty of everything and reject the insanity defense. Double, you're saying you'd vote not guilty across the board. So I just don't like the way these prosecutors handle it. So I just really hope for that reason, among others, because they've not proven their case. But when prosecutors act that way, not trustworthy and reliable, I really don't want them to do good. They just should not be rewarded for that. So So with that, folks, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. It's getting late. Thanks for supporting this case. I'd like to talk more about some of the other things going on, some other cases going on. And there is a Hulu special starting September 1st, a 4-episode series, a docu-series on the Dan Markel murder case. So I just got notice of that today. There's also a conviction in the trial going on there in Jacksonville, murder case with Jared Bridegan, the spouse of the ex-wife of Jared Bridegan was convicted. So yeah, so this is such a bad case, but you know what? This is building awareness for postpartum, as well as you got to be careful if you're on these meds. They can really mess with you. So I think a verdict would come back as soon as I think a verdict would come back is maybe tomorrow afternoon. Otherwise, they're going to come back Monday or later. If there's the longer this takes, the more I think there's a chance of a hung jury. I just don't see her going down on first degree. But it's really, really strange. I just don't have such a strange case. I just don't. I've never seen this before, so it's hard to predict the outcome. But knowing the sense of where justice lies, I think justice lies with the defense camp, not with the prosecution. So that's it for the evening. And so overall, let me give a score. I guess I didn't just give a scorecard for the prosecution. I think the prosecution delivery on this was really flat, and no passion. It picked up a little bit towards the end, but I just think based on credibility, trustworthy, delivery style, everything, it's pretty much a D. I'll give it a D. So they don't deserve to win this. Really did a flat job tonight. Flat effect. So that's it. Y'all take care, be safe, and I hope to be back on again this weekend. So stay tuned. Thanks. Good night.